Have you ever looked around and wondered, how many people are just pretending to be good? Diogenes of Sinope didn't wonder. He knew. His answer? Almost all of them. This man, who chose to live in a barrel, who spat on the polished shoes of high society, who mocked the elite and stripped life down to its raw bones, made it his mission to expose the lies we now call manners. He once wandered through Athens with a lantern in broad daylight, claiming he was looking for one honest man. Just one. He never found him. Diogenes wasn't trying to be edgy. He wasn't angry for the sake of it. He had simply seen through the performance. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. We live in a world flooded with smiles. But how many of them are real? How are you, come from a place that actually cares? Politeness has become theater. Social grace is now a costume. And most of us, we've been wearing the mask so long, we've forgotten what our real face even looks like. Diogenes rejected it all. He broke the rules. On purpose. He ate in the streets. He slept wherever he wanted. He said what others were too afraid to admit. And when he did, people snapped. Their polite mask cracked. Their discomfort showed. And their truth, ugly, fragile, insecure, spilled out. That's what Diogenes understood. That most civility isn't born of respect. It's born of fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of social judgment. Fear of not fitting into the lie. But real kindness, it doesn't need an audience. It doesn't shift based on who's watching. It's consistent, quiet, unshakable. Today we've simply replaced one mask with another. Now it's all about saying the right thing, believing the right slogan, appearing on the right side, even if none of it comes from the soul. Diogenes would have called that what it is, another kind of lie. And maybe, just maybe, the first honest step we can take is to stop pretending. Respect matters. Of course it does. But what happens when respect becomes a ritual, a script, a checklist of forbidden phrases and approved slogans? Watch how some people speak today. Every sentence is filtered, pre-approved, double-checked against the moral mood of the moment. They don't speak from the soul. They recite. It's like they memorized a manual on how to be good and forgot to actually be good. Diogenes would have laughed. Then he would have spit in the face of that fear. Because that's what this is. Not sensitivity, not awareness, but a polished form of intellectual cowardice. When you're terrified of saying the wrong thing, you stop thinking altogether. You cling to safe ideas, repeat prepackaged truths, not because you believe them, but because they protect you. And here's the paradox. We live in a time obsessed with authenticity, yet so many walk around wearing scripted personalities. This new moral orthodoxy, it has its own fundamentalists, digital priests and moral police who monitor every word, ready to punish anyone who deviates from the sacred code. But ask yourself, does this constant surveillance create better humans or just better hiders? People who've learned to tuck their prejudice behind clean language and smiling masks. Ever feel strange helping someone without taking a photo of it? Welcome to the 21st century. We now live in a world where kindness, if unseen, is almost considered unreal, where generosity has to be posted to be counted. But Diogenes, he didn't need a camera to understand this game. He saw moral performance for what it was. To him, real goodness was nearly invisible, not because it was hiding, but because it never needed to announce itself. When you help someone to feel aligned with your soul, not your image, that's something else entirely. But now, even charity has been monetized. Every act of virtue is part of a brand. Every stance is a strategy. We choose causes not because they matter, but because they look good. And maybe, just maybe, some people do change through that process. Maybe they start with ego and end with empathy. But Diogenes, he wouldn't take that gamble. He didn't believe that noble ends could justify corrupted means. He lived like a dog, raw, honest, and unmuzzled. And maybe that's exactly the kind of bark our world needs right now. And no, being called a dog wasn't an insult. For Diogenes, it was an ideal. Because dogs don't lie. They don't fake affection. They don't suppress hunger or mask their exhaustion. They are what they are. Unfiltered, unapologetic, honest. That's why Diogenes chose to live like one. A philosophical dog. He slept when he was tired, ate when he was hungry, spoke the truth, raw and unpolished. To the polished elite of Athens, this was outrageous. To him, it was freedom. He had discovered a terrifying truth. Most of our cages, we built ourselves. Now picture it. A man with no house, no fancy clothes, no title. And yet somehow he was freer, lighter, and more alive than the richest citizens walking past him. That disturbed people, because it revealed something most would rather ignore. Maybe everything we've been chasing, the image, the approval, the applause, was never needed to begin with. Now, of course, not everyone can live as he did. You have responsibilities, people who depend on you, commitments that require some structure. But here's where his wisdom still applies. Ask yourself, which rules actually serve your soul? And which ones are just golden cages you've accepted out of habit? This isn't a call to abandon everything. It's a call to choose consciously, to keep only what adds depth and let go of what merely decorates the surface. And here's a question worth sitting with. Do you have the courage to be good in an imperfect way? Because there's a massive difference between polite goodness and courageous goodness. Polite goodness keeps everyone comfortable. Courageous goodness, it disrupts, it challenges, it sometimes makes people uncomfortable because it tells the truth. Diogenes wasn't cruel, but he didn't cushion reality either. He didn't whisper what needed to be said. He ripped the illusions off like a bandage, quick, sharp, and clean. Our world has fallen in love with safe kindness, the kind that never offends, never confronts, never risks being misunderstood. But what good is kindness if it keeps you silent in the face of destruction? Sometimes being truly good means disappointing expectations. It means saying no when yes is the easier answer. It means calling out the lies, even when they live in the people you love. And no, it's not about being harsh. It's about being real, about understanding that true goodness sometimes wears thorns. Not because it wants to wound, but because it refuses to be fake. That real love can include difficult moments. That truly helping someone doesn't always mean telling them what they want to hear. Ask yourself, how many of your friends would still be around if you stopped being convenient? If you stopped nodding along? Stopped being endlessly agreeable, constantly available, always smiling? Diogenes ran this test daily, and what he discovered about human nature wasn't always flattering. Most relationships, he found, are quiet transactions. I make you feel important. You make me feel seen. I ignore your flaws. You overlook mine. We validate each other's illusions and call it connection. It's not cruelty, it's comfort, a silent pact of mutual convenience. But Diogenes chose differently. He preferred honest solitude to dishonest company. He'd rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded in pretense. And that radical choice, it gave him something rare, clarity. He saw plainly who came to him with real affection and who only came when there was something to gain. Most of us aren't that bold. We tolerate shallow friendships because the silence of being alone terrifies us. We trade authenticity for presence, even if that presence is hollow. But there's a difference between being alone and being abandoned. Diogenes was alone by choice, and more importantly, he liked his own company. This doesn't mean we should cut ties with every imperfect friend. It means learning to cherish the rare souls with whom you can be completely honest, without fear of being discarded. Walk through any city today, and Diogenes would immediately recognize the scene. A giant theater where everyone plays a carefully edited version of themselves. Some perform wealth by buying what they can't afford. Some perform joy by posting curated moments of happiness. Some perform wisdom by parroting trendy spiritual sound bites. It's a show, and we're all both actor and audience, applauding ourselves, performing for one another. But Diogenes? He stepped off the stage. He refused the costume, refused the applause, refused the role, and that refusal gave him perspective. He could see the illusion because he wasn't trapped inside it. But here's the twist. Maybe not all performance is meaningless. Maybe pretending to be better sometimes pushes us toward becoming better. Maybe aspiring to an idealized version of ourselves, even if it starts as an act, can still be a form of growth. The question is, are you pretending to impress or pretending to evolve? There's a world of difference. The real challenge is finding the line between aspiration and performance, between the honest desire to grow and the neurotic need to appear evolved. Diogenes taught that the difference is in your motivation. Do you want to become better for yourself or just to win applause from the crowd? There was a certain type of person Diogenes couldn't stand. The kind who learned how to sound wise without ever being wise, fluent in buzzwords, experts in opinions, masters of quoting books they've barely read. They don't seek truth. They seek status. They wear intelligence like a costume, using big words to impress, not to connect. These people are social strategists, reputation politicians, always campaigning for approval, never stopping long enough to question what they actually know. Diogenes? He did the opposite. He took pride in not knowing. He asked simple questions, and if he didn't understand something, he said so, without shame. Because to him, pretending to know was cowardice. It was fear in disguise, fear of seeming ordinary, fear of being exposed as human. And if that fear sounds familiar, look around. We live in the age of instant knowledge, where access to facts is mistaken for wisdom, where Googling replaces understanding, and repeating quotes is confused with thinking. But here's the irony. The moment you stop trying to look intelligent, you free your mind to become intelligent. The moment you stop performing, you start absorbing. And that, paradoxically, makes you wiser than any well-rehearsed intellectual act. Diogenes walked through life with only a cloak in his skin, but one day he saw a boy drinking water straight from his hands. And just like that, he tossed away his only cup, because even that was more than he needed. To him, every object he gave up meant 1 degree more of freedom. Now look at us. We've turned basic needs into rituals. We don't just drink, we hydrate with branded elixirs. We don't just eat, we curate culinary journeys. We don't wear clothes, we showcase identity. This forced sophistication, it's just another leash. Because when you need something elaborate to feel okay, you've already lost something essential. You've traded inner peace for external conditions. And your joy? Now hostage to trends, products, services, experiences. Diogenes would have smiled at that, then walked away barefoot, free. Diogenes discovered something radical, the kind of truth that shakes foundations. When you learn to be satisfied with the bare essentials, you unlock a kind of freedom no millionaire will ever taste. You become unshakable, unbothered, happy anywhere, with anything. Not because you have everything, but because you need so little. This isn't some romantic call to poverty. It's not about glorifying suffering. It's about asking the uncomfortable question, how many of our needs are actually real, and how many are just addictions, designed to make us feel important, unique, or different? The word cynic today, it's almost an insult. Bitter, cold, hopeless. That's how we hear it. But the cynicism of Diogenes? It was the opposite. It was a purification, a form of psychological hygiene, cleansing the soul from society's illusions. To be a true cynic, in his sense, was to see the world clearly, not through fear, not through flattery, but through truth. It meant being the one who says the emperor has no clothes while the crowd applauds imaginary silk. It meant asking questions no one else dared to ask, about culture, comfort, and convenience. And today, we desperately need that kind of cynicism. We're drowning in noise, endless information, experts on everything, truths that expire within a week. We need the courage to doubt, to question, to pause before parroting the latest certainty. But Diogenes' cynicism had something ours often lacks. Hope. He criticized, yes, but not to destroy, to free. He exposed hypocrisy not to mock, but to help people drop the masks and find something real beneath. His sharpness wasn't born of hate, it came from love, a fierce, uncomfortable kind of love that refused to let illusion rule. Unhealthy cynicism tears down and walks away. Healthy cynicism clears the fog so something truer can grow. And maybe that's what we're missing. One of the strangest pressures today is the need to have an opinion on everything. If a tragedy strikes halfway around the world, you must comment. If a debate erupts on social media, you must choose a side. If someone close suffers, you must display perfect, performative empathy. But Diogenes knew better. Sometimes truth means staying silent. When you don't truly understand a pain, why pretend you do? When your knowledge is shallow, why speak with confidence? Because faking compassion is just another form of lying. It's more noble to admit your limits than to manufacture feelings on demand. And that's what the modern world struggles to grasp. In a time of emotional inflation, real feelings have become performances. But Diogenes reminds us, honesty, even in silence, is worth more than applause for a lie. Everyone today is expected to feel everything. Always moved, always engaged, always emotionally available. But real emotion doesn't work that way. It's not a faucet you turn on. It's selective, private, rooted in lived experience, not trending hashtags. There's something deeply false about people who cry the same way for a stranger's tragedy on Instagram as they do for the loss of someone they love. That's not sensitivity. That's emotional theater. Diogenes didn't perform his feelings. He chose them. He felt deeply but selectively. And that was part of their beauty. They were real, not curated for approval, not broadcast for applause. And in this, Diogenes presents us with a question that cuts straight to the soul. Do you want to be free, or do you want to be approved? Because very often, you can't have both. Approval has rules. It's a contract. Be polite. Be agreeable. Support the right causes. Say the right things. Feel the right way at the right time. If you follow the script, you'll be rewarded, liked, accepted, loved, at least on the surface. But freedom, real freedom, it often demands the opposite. It means disappointing people, saying no when they expect a yes, speaking the truth even when it makes you the outsider. And yes, it will make you look difficult, unpleasant, not nice. Diogenes chose that path over 2,000 years ago. He chose to be misunderstood so he could remain real. And in doing so, he found something most people spend their lives chasing: peace. Not the peace that comes from approval, but the peace that comes from no longer needing it. Because when your choices come not from pressure, but from conviction, you become untouchable. You become whole. And that's where true goodness begins. Not from obedience, not from fear of judgment, not from trained politeness, but from freedom. From a place that has faced its own darkness and still chooses to do good. Because without freedom, virtue is just performance. And in the end, maybe the only way to truly be good is to first be free.